Now, Father Tony King, you came from Connemara.
Yes. My home village is Cleggan. It's the parish of Clifton. The old name for it was Ome and Ballindoon. So Ome's little island is tidal. And that's where my parents' family all are buried there on that island. That's where the cemetery is. My home village is Cleggan, and I was born in 1937, Christmas Eve. And I had an older brother who died from pneumonia.
What age was he?
He would have died, I'd say, when he was about around a year.
Yeah.
And he died of pneumonia, and then I came in 1937, and I'm the eldest of 7. In fact, another sister younger than me died from pneumonia as well.
No antibiotics that time?
Nothing. No. So I have 4 brothers, 2 sisters. I'm the eldest of that brigade, and they're all alive, thank God. And so after Cleggan National School, I was sent off to Jarlath's for 5 years.
Who taught you in Cleggan?
Cleggan, Miss O'Malley, May O'Malley, was the main teacher we had in the junior school, junior room. And then we had a number of teachers in the senior room. We had Morris, Micheál Fahartha, he was from Carrow. And then we had Morris Bowler, he was from Dingle. And I would certainly say that those 2 men were the most impressive teachers I ever had. And
even at that level, yeah? Even at that level?
At that level, yeah. Because they took a very broad view of education, and they certainly encouraged us. And in fact would have kind of given us extra tuition, which we didn't really appreciate at the time. So that going into secondary school, I think that we'd done a lot of stuff that we would be doing that would be coming up to junior cert. So I went to Jarlath's then, sent to Jarlath's. They're 1951 to 56. And sure, it was as all boarding schools were at the time. It was simple, and it was tough enough. I felt desperately lonely there in the beginnings because there was nobody else in my own area. It took me a long time to settle into it.
So you were a boarder? And what's it like going into a situation like that as a kid?
It was, well, you see, you were just venturing, you didn't know what was ahead of you. And so many others were in the same boat. And you see, there were no breaks at the time. You went in on the 1st of September and you got away about the 22nd of December or the 21st December. Usually in Chub, the time there'd be an opera was going on at the end of that term. But at that stage there were no breaks, or we used to get free days in the beginning in September. Get a free day, in other words, there'd be no class going on, and we had all the time for sport and games. And of course there's a huge interest in football in Jarlath's at the time.
Did it take you long to settle in?
I think I wrote a very long letter home to my parents in the middle of October, telling them that I felt that they were getting old and that they needed help at home, and that I felt that I had a responsibility towards them and that I was prepared to go home if I get permission.
That was kind of emotional blackmail, wasn't it?
My mother told me she kept the letter for a long time and she mislaid it somewhere, but anyway, for better or for worse, my wish wasn't granted. So at 56 then, I went to Maynooth.
To go back to Jarlath's, what was the food like there that time?
Very basic.
Very basic. What would you have for breakfast?
We'd have porridge and we'd have bread and tea and maybe jam. Then you'd have for dinner, you'd have meat and vegetables, but it would be certainly that the cooking wasn't the very best, or variety wasn't great. But you see, I suppose at the time when you look at it, I think that the fees in Jarlath's in 51 was £45
A year. A year.
and that would roughly be supposed to be the price of a good bullock. So I think it was. I remember coming back on the staff in '63, and it was maybe about 55 at that stage.
No inflation that time.
Not too much, no inflation.
Were there many in your class?
There were about 61. There were two classes.
It's divided, yeah.
Yeah, and
It was streamed, was it?
mixed, I think. More mixed than streamed.
Wasn't
yeah.
you do an exam when you went in and
Yeah,
yeah.
it was that and put into two classes. But of course, what kept you going really was the routine and the football and sport was the big thing. And of course, Jarlath's the senior team were I know the first year we went in there, we were beaten by St Mary's that year in the Connacht final. And Mick King, the vet town there in Newport Road, Mick was captain of St Mary's that year.
okay.
And they had a very good team. And then you see the Hogan Cups then came on later. They had been going on in 1947. Jarlath won the All-Ireland, the Hogan Cup. And they won it, I think, in 49 as well. But then, for some reason or other, I think that, the time they felt that it was taking up too much time with regards to studies. They were abolished then, but they were back in force in the 60s. And of course, that was a great focus for lads, that they'd be able to watch the team and how they was getting to games and all of that. And it certainly was, it kind of kept the morale alive. And Jarlath were looking in those years, they won in 53, and I think they won in 54, and they won in 56. So Summerhill was a big force at that time as well. But sport was and then athletics began to come in on the scene as well, and there'd be broad interest in music. Opera, of course, would have taken up a lot of time as well, and so I suppose these kind of activities would keep the interest alive and keep us occupied rather than getting into devilment and things like that.
And what subjects did you do?
I suppose the basic ones really Irish, English, history, geography, Latin and Greek, maths, of course, science.
There was science in your time, yeah?
Yeah,
There was.
yeah, science would come in. You do the broad spectrum of
Broad education.
and
is it a diocesan college?
that's right.
Yeah.
Diocesan College, yeah.
And did many of your class join the priesthood?
I think that there would be about 63 or 64 maybe in our class. I'd say maybe about 20 would have ventured to some stage. And I suppose in our class, 5 of us went to Maynooth for the diocese. And I'd say there would be about 7 or 8 others that would have continued on and were ordained for other dioceses. There was one went to the Columbans, one went to the Carmelites, and a few would have gone abroad.